Welcome to the Blockbusters and Birdwalks podcast. I am the curator, Garrett Chaffin-Quiray. Today we have a conversation with a friend, Ed Rosa.
That's me. Hi. My filmmaking partner and I have a YouTube channel, Toothless Richard Productions, where you can see a number of our short films.
When I began publishing Blockbusters and Birdwalks, it was a hosting site for essays and thoughts that I had, and that branched off into making podcasts. Then we agreed to do a partnership, and separately I have another partnership with a friend, Richard Ryan, making the High-Low Bro Show. One thing that Richard said to me in our last recording concerning the Big Dollhouse is the following.
I think that 1971 is in many ways a crux point when American counterculture, and specifically the anti-Vietnam War movement, has begun to get a little sour.
As always happens, the counterculture has sort of become the culture, and there's a lot on society's plate.
When I was probably 5 or 6 years old, I would occasionally be dropped off at my grandparents' house on a Saturday so my parents could have a date night. And we would always watch the Muppets, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, yeah.
And then we would always palate cleanse with the Benny Hill Show.
Nice.
Always. I point this out because this movie Bananas by Woody Allen from 1971 is so very familiar to me in its style because of those Benny Hill Saturdays at Grandma and Grandpa's. It's built on some funny sketches, some unfunny sketches, but it has a velocity to just blast through it. And that works in contrast to other sketch comedy shows, whether it's Saturday Night Live, you name the one that you prefer, where sometimes the sketches just go on too long.
Yeah, they can be real hit and miss.
Yeah, they
by
really
their,
can.
By their very nature.
That's how I arrive at Bananas with a reaction, which is to say, this is not an important movie. And it's not a great movie in Woody Allen's filmography, but it does its job of being relatively entertaining and painless and establishing the things that he would be forever stereotyped for doing forever after.
I am less familiar with Woody Allen's film work or his actual catalog as I am with his public persona and struggles. But, I was like, okay, this is how I've seen Woody Allen, like, impersonated by other comics.
I feel like my first squaring up with Woody Allen as a personality was, as you say, through impersonation. And it was probably in the schoolyard.
Yeah.
Some more literary kid who was a little more hip than I was, whose parents had certain kinds of records.
Right.
Or certain movies they would watch on Showtime or whatever was going on, would do a little bit. The next time I really remember thinking about Woody Allen, I'm taking film classes, and somebody points out, well, that's a Woody Allen neurotic type. I didn't know who Woody Allen was again, still haven't acquired that knowledge. Didn't know what being neurotic meant, so I wanted to nod and vigorously see that I get it in front of the teacher. Of course I didn't. And then there was a little scene show called The Critic, an animated show.
Oh, yeah, with John Lovitz.
Yeah.
It was done by, I think it was Al Jean and Mike Reiss, with the guys that did The Simpsons.
They spun
that started
off from
The Simpsons,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, in fact, there was an episode of The Simpsons that was like a backdoor pilot for The Critic.
That sounds right. And I think it came out with some excitement that it was going to go somewhere. I don't think it did.
Yeah, it only lasted 2 or maybe 3 seasons.
And I tried to watch where I could, because at that time, I wasn't always on a regular schedule being a young student, didn't have a wallet for a TV, just all the stuff, right? But I remember there being a little bit about Woody Allen and Soon Yi. And I didn't really know who Soon Yi was. I didn't know about his adoption strategy for developing a family. I didn't know about his multiple marriages. I didn't know about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
But there he was, with the glasses. So jump forward into this movie. The gist is we've got this guy, Fielding Mellish, and that's Woody Allen. He's a product tester for some unnamed conglomerate that just makes garbage for corporate America. Right. And that allows him to just do these comic vignettes while he tests the equipment.
It allows him to be a prop comic.
Right. And he is pretty good at that.
For a few minutes.
I'm not used to seeing him as a vigorous young man. I'm used to seeing him as a middle-aged person and older. So he's worked from the late 70s, but mostly from the 90s onward. Here he's spry, he's freckled, he's muscled, and that's a nice thing. He's a small guy, but still, he's got capability, and you see a lot of that in the physical performance. The wraparound structure is there has been an overthrow of a government, a coup d'etat, in
San Marcos.
In San Marcos. Puerto Rico is the double for it, and that's where they shot the film.
Right, because he's kind of supposed to be like Castro, right? Or
a little bit. It's organized like that.
Okay.
Through a long series of weird coincidences, eventually Fielding is asked to go down and be a go-between for CIA-like operatives, but he becomes friendly with the locals in San Marcos, and he becomes ultimately the president of the country, which creates problems when he wants to come back to the United States and renew his life, but he can't because he's the president of a foreign country, etc. It's really not much of a plot, and it's not hard to follow, nor is it that complex and desperately interesting, but it allows Fielding, i.e. Woody Allen, to just do bits, constant bits, while chasing a woman that he loves, a woman that he lusts after, the men he's trying to impress, the men who are impressed with him, over and over and over again. That's the movie, Bananas.
Right.
So named for it's kind of crazy. Banana Republics, all of it.
I guess that's kind of what I thought.
Yeah.
Banana Republic.
What are the standout elements of this movie that please you?
What I think of with Woody Allen is this dude who's sort of preoccupied with sex and relationships, which I guess is probably something, I mean, I know that's something that resonates with me, but I was also kind of a little impressed by some of the surrealist and, like, absurdist elements to some of the bits, and I really did appreciate that. There was a couple of jokes he made in there that, you know, probably have aged really poorly, considering, you know, all the his trials and tribulations today.
Well, there's a spot, for instance, where he's trying to feminize himself and appear gay, but he's behaving within the context of his times. It says, this equals funny.
Well, and
straight guy preoccupied with having sex with women is acting like a swishy kind of a man.
Right. Well, he also had that one joke that he, you know, in the film he acknowledges tanks, but he does talk about he was, you know, moving on to advanced child molesting.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you know, that's a little close to the bone. Even though, you know, he has been investigated and cleared by the police.
Right.
I was like, okay, wow, that's, you know, to an audience of today, that's going to be like,
seriously,
there it is.
There must be a supercut in YouTube of somebody who's gone through his must be 50 plus features and just pulled those little lines.
I'll bet.
And of course, the lion's share of it probably comes straight out of Manhattan, where he, a middle-aged man, ditches his lady friend to go after a girl, and she is a literal girl inside of the movie. And I think when the actress was cast, she was a girl, like under 18.
But I also did appreciate it was very much like his film. Like it had his personal sort of stamp all over it, to be sort of this early in his career and to not really have had the films that really elevated him to that top tier, where everybody in Hollywood is like just climbing over each other to work with him.
Well, an example that I'm thinking of as you speak, when I started this movie, I wanted to make sure my speakers were up on my computer, because that's how I watched it. So I just pulled my cursor across the file and landed on the scene when his girlfriend, in real life, his wife...
Louise Lasser?
Yeah, they were
married.
They were married. So his on-screen girlfriend is his off-screen wife of the time, and she's breaking up with him. So they have this conversation while I think they're walking through Central Park.
That was one of the funnier parts. I laughed out loud.
Maybe I just can't give.
What do you mean you can't give? Then why don't you receive and I'll give?
I'm not ready to receive.
Well, then you give and I'll receive.
Well, I can't receive.
Well, you see, I'm a person who can only receive if another is giving.
Well, I can't give. I'm sorry.
But if we each receive, it might work.
Well, I can't receive. My trouble is I'm receiving, and I'm only not able to give or to receive.
It's all very clean language. But it's the hidden meanings when you combine words with rat-tat-tat-tat-tat delivery.
Right.
He's really kind of a marvel. And I think that's probably because he got his start writing that way for Sid Caesar and others on television.
Yeah, because he came up in the early days of TV, like with Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner, and doing like writing for Sid Caesar. Or...
Like, here's a joke. Do you like it? $5. Here's another joke. And you learn to just be speedy and hasty. And there's a certain kind of inward-looking humor, which you could attach very clearly to being a Jewish New Yorker metropolitan area person, and the references that are made. And another point, which I think is revisited in several of his comedies through the 70s, as he was mining the breadth of what movies could do, is purposefully not adhering to any form of realism. Example, the opening of the movie is a set of investigative reporters and Howard Cosell,
Yeah.
who are at the capital of San Marcos as there is a literal coup, and we watch the president get assassinated.
Yeah, that almost had like Monty Python vibes, like as if it's the assassination of the leader is like
and they're
an
doing a
official
play-by-play.
event. Right, yeah.
But the man who's being infilated with bullets doesn't bleed, he just hunches over.
Right.
It's not gross or disgusting
No.
that way. And of course, that violates what we're expecting. And at this time, blood and guts were definitely something we were putting on screen.
Yeah, this is, 2 years after the Wild Bunch, and Straw Dogs was like this year.
Yeah,
Clockwork
Orange was this year. I mean, we're capable of doing
Yeah.
some dark stuff, and we're not doing that here. So those elements, they pay a dividend because he's also playing with the notion of an in-story personality called Howard Cosell as the example that stays with me the most. But I think there are several others.
In the final scene, he's even wearing his Wide World of Sports
That's right.
blazer.
That's right.
With the the big patch, the ABC right on it.
Right, a complete tie-in. It's wonderful that way. And, of course, an audience then would have been very like, oh, he's talking directly to what we're aware of. And that has some value. But it really pays off in that final sequence when the girlfriend who dumped him earlier on, played by his off-screen wife, they reconcile and go to bed. And then Howard Cosell asks for, how did it go?
Nancy, I know that this is very personal, but
Oh, Howard.
was it everything you expected?
Well, Howard, it all went by so fast. I just had no idea that it would be so quick, really. I was expecting a longer bout.
It was a relatively small budget movie of $2 million then, which would be like $15.5 million today. It didn't do huge business, almost $12 million in gross, which is like $91 million today. So that's not a blockbuster, but that's a handsome rate of return.
Yeah, that's okay. You can make another one of these.
Some of the reviews I looked up, they weren't pans, but they weren't celebrations either. They were kind of like, so what?
Yeah.
But if what you're looking for is kind of that, and let's be direct. Some weekends, that's all you really want is a way to just spend 2 hours. A technical matter that I noticed, maybe you saw this too, or heard it, I should say, is some of the bits, again, like Benny Hill, it's a live video feed. There's no sync sound. You're just listening to Marvin Hamlish's score.
Which is fantastic.
Which is fantastic. So you're watching these bits, and you're not hearing anything that's synchronized. You don't need to, because it's all visual. You get the joke, and then later on there will be this super fast repartee, like the breakup scene at Central Park, where that is probably post-sync.
Shooting MLS is always easier and cheaper. We'll just ADR this later.
Right.
But the trick is
synchrony.
Right, and not making it obvious. It's funny because, growing up, I'd watch movies and I just always assumed, they're just recording all the sound.
Right. As it's happening.
As it's happening.
Yeah.
But now, I'm real attuned to it, and I can smell ADR like a fart in a car.
Oh, totally.
You know what
That's
I mean?
a good way to put it.
And
especially because if one speaker is extra loud and the other isn't, and they're in the same place, so there's an echo. There are other gaggy little references too, because of course Woody Allen is also a film scholar of sorts. There's a whole revolution that happens in San Marcos partway through, and a bouncing cradle goes right down a stairway, and it's the Potemkin steps.
Right.
Now, a person doesn't have to know the reference. But if you do, you're like, he's giving me one. Right.
So often in life, you make a Battleship Potemkin reference or joke, like it's going to sink like the Titanic.
So this movie also comes out in a moment when there are some other notable titles. THX 1138, Summer of 42, and Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song up against Big Doll House. Now,
Right.
I suggest those movies all in a big, breathy statement because this is a springtime release, April. And that springtime quality of release means that's when a lot of different genre fare shows up to compete for an audience of people who are coming out of their winter. But it also means there's an opportunity to appeal to slivers of the overall market before you get the summer season, which hadn't been fully codified quite yet.
Yeah, this isn't until Jaws.
Comes a few years later.
Yeah.
This is a moment, though, where THX is going for the sci-fi people who want darkness and dystopia. Andromeda Strain is getting a few of those people as well, but it's a scientific procedural.
Right.
You're getting Summer of 42, a kind of a romance, but it's a nostalgic romance. Maybe it's going to get the middle-agers, but also the horny young people who are hoping they're going to see things they're not supposed to.
Right.
Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, black folks doing it, committing violence, getting one over on the man in the Big Doll House. boobies, boobies, boobies. It's all right there, and this lands in the middle of it.
Yeah, and certainly more lighthearted than something like THX 1138. Or
Yeah, it's a real departure and something that
Sweetback.
would be light and entertaining. And then we go into May, where we get Billy Jack and Plaza Suite and Johnny Got His Gun, and man, that one,
jeez, yeah,
that one will
that's
put you on your
rough.
back. But you get more of this sort of entertainment, genre-oriented stuff with Escape from Planet of the Apes. You get a weird experimental movie, Pink Narcissus, which helps acknowledge that there are gay folk in the world. You get The Beguiled, which is kind of fantastic. And then in the summer itself of June, you start to get some of the things that this season is also remembered for, like McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
And then taking from his wallet an old schedule of trains, he'll say, I told you when I came I was a stranger. I told you when I came I was a stranger.
When we are thinking about a movie this old, that is also a reflection on the filmmaker who is still with us, who has just produced his latest movie, I try to imagine what would my position have been if I were in charge of a modest budget at a studio in the late 60s or 70s and people are constantly pitching me ideas. Would I have backed this movie?
Right.
And I think at the time, given the bona fides he had made evident as a writer for television, with a couple of feature films behind him, with this cast of comic performers around him, and the sketch kind of mentality, and the gist of it being topically like things people would have been aware of, I might have said, okay, sure. But I don't know that I would have.
Yeah.
Because I might have found him an unpleasant guy to deal with.
I gotta believe there's a whole audience of people that if you tried to show this, they would just want to kick his ass the
Right.
whole time.
And they would just be done. Like this is evidence of why you do violence to strangers.
Right. Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
This is Blockbusters and Birdwalks, a conversation between Garrett Chaffin-Quiray and
Ed Rosa.
Boop boobity doo.